It is NHL draft week. It's the first full week of the offseason. That means lots of action, and we got some more talks about JJ Peterka. I've got 5 trades that I would trade JJ Peterka for. I'll tell you what they are coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into a new week here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check us out on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. You could also participate in our Locked On Sabres text club, get some breaking news alerts as we are expecting moves in the coming days and the coming weeks as the draft happens and then free agency. And you want to stay up to date on all of that. You want your reaction? We'll go a little back and forth. That's all on our text club. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres is the place to sign up for that. And this is the best time of year to be locked in minute to minute, which we had a little bit this morning. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on today's show. We're going to talk about JJ Peterka and kind of the advanced rumors and reports that we've heard about him. And I really haven't gotten to deals I would send Peterka away for. So I wanted to do that on today's show. We'll have a full talk about the NHL draft coming up on Wednesday, and then we get to the draft on Friday and maybe deals along the way. I kind of think the Sabres will do something before the draft on Friday, but we'll see. Already have some action in the league. As I mentioned, we were in the text club going back and forth about Trevor Zegras, who this morning, it happened very quickly. It was Elliot Friedman saying that the Ducks are in advanced talks to move Zegras somewhere, but we didn't know where. And we're talking about it and what you would move off the Sabres for Zegras. And I'm telling Texans, like, it's not my favorite idea. I've never really loved the player, and he's not somebody that I would spend much to get here in Buffalo. And it didn't really get that far as a conversation because he's traded to Philadelphia within a couple of minutes. He goes to the Flyers for not that much. Ryan Poehling, a third liner, a second-round pick, which is whatever, and a fourth-round pick. So, not really much for a guy that was on the NHL video game cover. But I think we all kind of know Zegras at this point is not as good as the hype was when he was scoring, Michigan goals, and he did that move where he put the puck over the net against the Sabres that was here in Buffalo. So didn't lose any sleep at all that Zegras is not coming to the Buffalo Sabres. But it is another deal as the league picks up the pace here and teams start to build for next season. So with all that being said, let's get into what we've heard about JJ Peterka today and what I would trade Peterka away for, because I'm not trying to trade Peterka away. I like Peterka as a player. If I were the Buffalo Sabres, I would be very hesitant to move him, and I would not move him unless I got something that I think makes me better right now. I'm not trading Peterka for the sake of trading Peterka, and that kind of seems to be the Sabres' attitude. Again, Elliot Friedman wants to double down and confirm to everybody this morning that, hey, the Sabres don't want to do this. They are having the talks, and someone's going to have to make them want to do it, which basically means we're not dealing him unless you really knock our socks off. But I do think there are deals out there that could entice the Sabres to say yes. Frank Saravelli, who he's got to have an in somewhere, because I have not seen anybody report on one player and the trade inquiries around them as much as I've seen Frank Saravelli report on JJ Peterka going back to the trade deadline. So he's got his connection, and he says that he expects, or he thinks, Peterka will be traded, or the due diligence will be done on a deal by Friday. So this week, we're going to get a Peterka deal if you listen to Saravelli. I'm not as confident that that is going to happen. I tend to believe that it's possible, but I would not go as far as to say it is likely. I think maybe it's 50-50 that he's traded at all. And then you get down to, well, what are the odds it happens this week? 25-75 yes, 25 yes, 75 no this week. But hey, that's a shot. That's a chance that it could actually happen, but will anybody pay the price? If you got a Peterka trade idea that you want to throw my way, be sure to hit us up. Text Club, you could do that. Twitter as well, at Sneaky Joe Sports and at Locked On Sabres, because it's not an easy one, right? It's not an easy one because he's a very good player. He's a young player, and the Sabres have leverage in terms of contract control unless he's offer sheeted. Then they lose that a little bit and they have to make a decision. But if they were to deal him, what is the type of offer that to me would get the Buffalo Sabres to say yes? So I've got 5 trades, 2 involving Peterka for forwards, 2 involving Peterka for defensemen, and then 1 involving JJ Peterka for a goaltender that I just kind of thought about and talked about today. So let's get to it all, and let's start with the forward position. You like these trades? Reach out. Tell me why you like it, why you hate it, why you wouldn't do it, or if you want to edit one of these. Again, be sure to reach out. So, starting with the 2 trades I would do for forwards, and I wanted to keep this somewhat in the realm of this guy's name being out there in trade conversations, at the very least. And I'll start with a hockey trade that involves a player that Dave Pagnotta from the 4th period said this week the Buffalo Sabres have shown interest in. It's a very, on the scale of how serious is this to actually happen, interest is low on the totem pole, right? That it could just be you made a phone call, and that's pretty much it. You know, when we saw significant talks earlier today about Zegras, that was, okay, that's about to be done. Significant talks well above interest. Well, on Rossi, maybe we're just at interest. So Marco Rossi, JJ Peterka, 1-for-1, straight up trade. That's all I'm looking at for this deal with a team that the Sabres have made a lot of deals with in the past. That is the Minnesota Wild. Now, Rossi, I think the deal there is Minnesota doesn't want to pay him for whatever rhyme or reason. Now, he's a restricted free agent. And is he looking for the long-term deal right now? What is it? I don't know. He has contract control, by the way, until he is in 2029. July of 2029 is when he can first become a UFA. So you've got 4 years still. 4 years of contract control over Rossi, who, if you remember, a little background on him, smallish centerman, 5'9", 182 pounds from Austria, was the 9th overall pick in the 2020 draft. This is the guy that everybody wanted the Sabres to draft when they picked Jack Quinn. And Quinn went 8, Rossi went 9. Rossi was actually his teammate with the Ottawa 67s. And Rossi had COVID complications, remember, missed a ton of time on the ice and really didn't get his career rolling until last season, 23-24. So he missed a lot of his development, a lot of it. And yet, he still had 2 seasons in a row where he has produced 20-goal seasons back-to-back, 100 points combined between the two, and getting more position flexibility with Rossi than I am getting with Peterka. And with Rossi, I would expect that he's going to play center probably anywhere he goes. But if you were to come to the Buffalo Sabres, I think he's a centerman, 100%. So you're trading a winger for a center. Now, a little bit more offense in the last 2 years from Peterka than Rossi, but it's pretty close. He's also a restricted free agent. The reason that I might think Peterka makes a little more sense for Minnesota than Rossi does is Peterka might be more willing to accept a bridge deal than Rossi is in Minnesota if they're hesitant to give him a long-term deal, because Peterka, one, probably wants to win. And in Minnesota, it's not quite Stanley Cup contention, but it's certainly a level above where the Buffalo Sabres are, which is they can't even get into the playoffs. So you definitely have that going for you in Minnesota. And you might have a team that's like, all right, I'll do the bridge deal. I didn't want to pay this guy 7-8 year deals, no matter who it was going to be. So if Marco is not really wanting to do the 7-year deal, or is wanting to do the 7-year deal, and Peterka's not, then maybe they prefer Peterka. But it'd be a hockey trade. It'd be a 1-for-1, and you would be sending Peterka to Minnesota for Marco Rossi. That's a deal that I would do. I would do that trade if Minnesota wants to deal. The other forward-based trade that I would trade JJ Peterka for. Let's go back to a deal that we obsessed about in the season that involved a different Buffalo Sabre at the time, Elias Pettersson. It has become much, much more quiet on Elias Pettersson. Now, the reason I'm leaving the door open is there's a date coming up. July 1st is when that no movement clause kicks in. And even though we haven't heard a lot about Pettersson, that'd be one where maybe I got to make the phone call if I'm Kevyn Adams, but I'm calling him one last time to say, listen, I know this is about to kick in. Are you sure you want to pay this guy $11.6 million per year for the next 7 years? Or are you spooked? Because if you are, I'm still here. Instead of Dylan Cousins, though, who I don't have anymore, I'll give you JJ Peterka along with Bo Byram. Let's do it. I'd make that call. And if the Canucks were interested in that deal, that's a move I would move Peterka for. I am upgrading. I am taking him. I am packaging him with someone else. That is the 2-for-1 trade involving JJ Peterka that, to me, is the best possible Peterka trade out there. You could input Jason Robertson in for Elias Pettersson if you want also. The 2-for-1 deal, Peterka and Byram, or Peterka and somebody else for the big star player. Pettersson, Jason Robertson, those are the deals I'd be targeting. I'm using Pettersson for this one, though, because I'm getting the center. And Vancouver, I know, has showed interest in Byram in the past, so there's that part of it. Would they like Peterka? They do like Josh Norris. We had that confirmed about a month ago. But I would be calling, and that's a deal that I would move Peterka for. Now, when we come back, 2 deals involving defensemen that I would move JJ Peterka for. If you didn't like the first 2, well, maybe you'll like these 2. That's coming up. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Wonderful Pistachios. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, they are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein. That gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I like the no shells variety. Perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. If I'm snacking at my desk here or driving out to the golf course or just need a quick protein boost, they are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite too. So whether you're running between meetings, dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Right now, go to wonderfulpistachios.com. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. I mean, this week and next week, they are going to shape the Buffalo Sabres season more than any 2 weeks, really in the whole calendar year. So we should have some big things coming. I hope. What about Peterka for defensemen? The Sabres need to add on their blue line. They need a second pair guy to pair with Owen Power. Well, here's a couple of moves that I would move Peterka for. Now, the start, I'm going to go to Calgary, and I'm going to talk about a player that his name is back on the trade rumor because it looks like Calgary is open to moving this player once again. I'm going to have one caveat, though. Peterka for Rasmus Andersson, 28-year-old right shot defenseman, 6'1", 202, veteran player, has averaged 20 minutes per night, 5 years in a row for the Flames, including over 23 last season. Coming off a 11-goal, 31-point season. He has scored in the last 3 years 31 goals combined, so he's averaging in the double digits. He gets the power play time. He's a top pair defenseman at Calgary. I envision him as a second pair defenseman with the Buffalo Sabres. Rasmus Andersson. However, I need one caveat. 2 years ago, I might have told you I will do this straight up. I'll take the risk. In fact, we did a couple shows talking about Andersson a couple years ago. Player I've liked for a while. Smooth puck mover. I like his skill set a lot. Not giant, big, physical defenseman. I mean, he's physical enough. He'll throw his body around. He blocks a lot of shots. He'll stick up for teammates, but you're not getting him for the big, hulking physicality. But he does have some of it. 2 years ago, he was 2 years without, he didn't have 2 down seasons, which is really what he's had in the last 2 years defensively. And he had a couple years of contract control left. I tell you right now that if he hadn't had a down year and he had continued to elevate, I'd be willing to take the risk and say, all right, I'll acquire him without knowing what's ahead contract-wise because I like the player that much. I'll take the risk. But that hasn't happened. So because there's only 1 year left and his value's lower because he had a down year and I'm the Buffalo Sabres, I need to talk to him beforehand and I need an extension. I'm going to need an extension verbally committed or close to it to make this deal because he is a little bit older and he's not a good enough player to me right now that's worth trading Peterka for if I'm only going to get 1 season. I need more than that. So I'll do it for Anderson, but I need to talk to him first and I need contract control. If I were Adams, I would be more willing to do deals like that where you're not knowing whether the guy will stay. But this is one hypothetical where I just think the down year is the reason why I would need the contract. So a right shot guy that would pair with Owen Power, like I like the fit for Rasmus Andersson. He plays a lot of minutes. I think he's a better player than Bowen Byram is. Maybe some people would see that as a lateral move. I wouldn't. I like the player more than I do Bo Byram, so I would be willing to do that. The other trade that I like more that involves a defenseman, even though the defenseman you could argue isn't even the main piece of this. This is a player that I see a lot on Sabres Twitter, often like the idea of, and he's got really good advanced numbers. He is a good player when it comes to shot attempts and expected goals. He's and most of that is because of his defensive game. I'm going to trade JJ Peterka to Vegas for Ivan Barbashev up front and Zach Whitecloud on the back end. Money that might come to be about even because Peterka, you picture he's going to make $7+ million per year. And if you look at those two players, Barbashev makes $5 million a year for 3 more seasons. Whitecloud makes $2.75 million for 3 more seasons. So you got 3 years of contract control for both players. Whitecloud, 28 years old. Barbashev, 29 years old. No trade protection for Whitecloud. Barbashev does have an 8-team no trade list, so I'm going to maybe have to work that a little bit if the Sabres are on the list. But 8 teams, maybe they're not on it. It could be a no Canada clause with a couple of others that aren't Buffalo. Maybe like Columbus or somebody else. So Barbashev is not going to give you the upside offensively that Peterka does for the long term, but he has played very well with Jack Eichel the last couple of seasons. Barbashev, if you look at his time in the NHL, again, there are some 40-point years, but there are some 60-point years also. This past season, 23 goals, 51 points, playing, again, a lot with Jack Eichel. Last year, 19 goals and 45 points. His last year in St. Louis in 2022, 26 goals, 60 points. That's his career high. And all this offense is really more in the last couple of years. So in Barbashev, what you're getting is a veteran. You're getting a more consistent player than Peterka when it's drawn out through the course of a season. Not huge, but physical. He is going to throw his body around. He is going to hit. He is going to defend teammates. I thought he was a good defensive player, but doing some more reading about him and then also pairing that with some of the numbers, he might not actually be that good of a defensive player. But I'm getting some offense. He's going to play in my top 6. And when you put him with a really good line mate, like they did in Vegas with Eichel, he can score more than 20 goals a year and has done that a couple of times. I'm also getting Zach Whitecloud. Zach Whitecloud, again, the defensive game, the ability to play on my second pair with Owen Power, really like that fit, those two together. Whitecloud is a right shot guy. Again, I don't really care as much about that when it comes to Power because Power, I think, can play both and even might be better in the right. But if you care about it, lefty, righty, gives you a right shot guy that they don't have a lot of. He's never really played a big role in Vegas. Often third pair, sometimes second pair. He is averaged less than 18 minutes a night 3 years in a row for the Golden Knights. So you'd be taking a little bit of a risk that he could continue to produce good results, but in an expanded role. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you give a guy an elevated role and it doesn't look the same. But I would be hopeful that him playing on the second pair with Owen Power, that's a savvy move for a not star player, but that could really, really help you. 6'2", 210, hits, block shots, good puck mover. I like the idea of White Cloud being the second piece of that deal along with Barbashev for Peterka. I'm getting a 1-for-2 deal. Not my favorite idea for Peterka, the 1-for-2 in general, but for those two players specifically, I'd be willing to do that. When we come back, a goalie trade that I would move Peterka for. This one I kind of stumbled upon today, and I'm starting to really like it, and it makes a little bit of sense. Get to that when we come back here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball, under the lights, you got golf, or high-stakes soccer action, we got the Club World Cup and the Gold Cup going right now. FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. When I'm looking at these big European clubs playing against these smaller clubs in the Club World Cup, I just like to go for the favorites and often with the goals because they're winning these games by a lot. Also, tennis, go for the favorites. This week, that's what I do. I go for the favorites in the majors. So coming up this week, you got that going for you as well. Still some good sports coming up in this summer. So with FanDuel, you get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburn on the beach. I've been using FanDuel, tracking all these games. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5. You get $150 in bonus bets. How can you beat that? That's if your first bet wins. So again, $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, 4 out of 5 down on JJ Peterka trades that I would say yes to if I were Kevyn Adams. One more that includes a goaltender. The Buffalo Sabres have not, during this whole drought, ever made a big swing for a goaltender, other than you could probably argue that for Robin Lehner. I mean, they did once upon a time trade a first-round pick for a goaltender straight up, and that was Robin Lehner, who at the time hadn't played a lot of games. He had only played 76 games in the NHL, all for Ottawa, and that was over the course of multiple years. Didn't really work out. I always defend that his numbers were better than what you remember him for, but it certainly didn't win. He was hurt. He was hurt all the time, and obviously there was mental things going on with Robin Lehner as well, and it didn't end up coming to fruition. So Lehner. But again, I thought a better goalie than we thought. But that's the one time, and that's really it. Everything else has been Eric Comrie and, well, this guy's Lukanins and Ullmark's, development guys. And Ullmark was good, but the big swing to go get one, that hasn't happened. That is what Jeremy Swayman would be of the Boston Bruins. And the reason I bring this up as an idea, JJ Peterka and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for Jeremy Swayman, and I really had a lot of trouble finding another piece to kind of make this a 2-for-2 hockey trade. I threw Casey Middlestad into the deal. I don't really want the Sabres to reacquire Casey Middlestad. I don't need it. Boston, though, this is a part of what they are right now. Go look at that Bruins roster and give me a forward you'd have any interest in. Matthew Poitras, I thought, was maybe another one that I could throw into the deal. Let's make it him, actually, instead of Middlestad, because they're not going to want to go backwards. Poitras was second-round pick in 2022. Poitras, by the way. He came into the league, I thought it was Poitras. It's Poitras. He has not really put up anything in terms of stats in the National Hockey League. He's played 66 games in 2 years. He has 2 goals, 20 assists for 26 points. There was a little bit of hype of him when he was coming into the league, but that could have just been Boston, overrating guys. With the Providence Bruins last year in the AHL, point-a-game player. So Maybe a guy you could hope takes a step up into the NHL at some point. He's not why I'm doing this anyway. This is about I'm getting a goalie. I'm taking Peterka. I'm getting out of the Luukkonen contract. I don't need him anyway if I'm doing this. And Boston might want him. They made a trade like this last year for Ullmark. And I'm getting the Sabres a number one goaltender. Now, here are some of the complicating factors. One, why Boston might be willing to trade him. And two, why he's not a perfect idea. Why Boston would be willing to trade him, in my opinion, and others have talked about him too for this, last year, contract negotiations were pretty contentious between the Bruins and Swayman. They ended up landing on a deal, but remember the Cam Neely and the Bruins talking about Swayman in the media, and Swayman even did that a little bit as well. Like, it got ugly between the Bruins and Swayman. And okay, they finally agreed to a deal, but then what happened? After that happened, all that contract stuff, he allowed more goals in the NHL last year than any other goaltender. 176. He had an .892 save percentage, losing record. First time a Bruins goalie's done that in how long? The team was horrible last year, and he was bad. No doubt about it. He was bad last year for the Bruins. So you'd have a couple of reasons why the Bruins might be wanting to deal him. Maybe their relationship was sour to begin with. Then maybe it got even worse when he didn't follow up by earning the contract after they gave it to him. And three, he has no trade protection for one more week. July 1st, it kicks in a full no movement clause. He has got 7 years left on that deal. And after July 1st, he has all the leverage of where he goes forever. If the Bruins want to get ahead of that, if they hate how this has turned out, where maybe they don't love the idea of having him for that much longer and then having no leverage and a trade negotiation where he could tell them, I'm only going to these two places, and now you can't really have a bidding war for him. Maybe they just want to pull the chute before they get locked in. The part about him having a terrible season, though, is the risk of any team that would acquire him. And that's where you might not love it. I threw this idea to our text club, and it was about 75-25, I would say, that liked the deal. But there were a bunch of texters that were like, no. Like, one texter wrote in this morning, no way, that's awful. Swayman was the product of a great team and a system, plus you have Levi in the shadows. I saw a lot of that. I'd be willing to do it because I think Swayman's better than what we saw last year in Boston. And I think he is your potential number one goaltender that you haven't swung for the whole drought. And I see value in getting out of the Luukkonen contract. So I'm getting rid of the Luukkonen contract, not paying him $5+ million a year. I could do something else with that money. And I am giving up Peterka, but I'm giving up Peterka for a potential number one. And as I mentioned, Boston has no forwards, no scoring. It is Pastrnak Island up there in Massachusetts. He is by himself, and he needs help. They need centermen, and I'm not really helping them there, but I am giving them another top line forward, or at least second line forward that they sorely need. So giving them a goalie back in exchange, they can start to build up the actual roster, figure out goalie later, and get out of a relationship that maybe they kind of hate. So Jeremy Swayman. And listen, that's your ticket. If he fails, then that could blow up in your face. And that's the risk of this deal. The risk of the deal is he was the product of a system, like that texter said, and I'm stuck with a goalie contract for a long time for a guy that's not that good. That's a big risk. I know. But the flip end is I think he's more likely to be a top 10 number one goalie in the NHL, far more likely than Luukkonen is right now, and than Levi is, because I don't know what's going to happen with Levi. AHL goalies can be a crapshoot. I'm still confident Levi will get there, but I'm not sure. I think it's more likely Swayman is that guy than both of them, even maybe both of them combined. So I'd do that too. Peterka to Boston with Luukkonen, and I get Jeremy Swayman and throw one of your forwards in. We'll make it Poitras in this one. Not Middlestat. I don't think we need Middlestat back under any circumstance. $5.75 million per year. That's the other reason I wouldn't want to do that for Middlestat. Bad contract. All right, that's going to do it for us. Just going to double check Twitter here and make sure there's no trades before we hit end here on the record button. But yeah, nothing. No trades for the Sabres just yet. We'll see if we get it, though, in the coming days. That's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Of course, the Zegras trade in Philly. The Panthers can't stop talking trash. I mean, there's a lot going on in the NHL as the offseason gets rolling. So be sure to check out Locked On NHL, bringing you the league-wide stories on a daily basis. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll talk Wednesday about any rumors that we hear and also the NHL draft, what's available for the Sabres at 9, what they could trade the 9th pick for. A lot to get to coming up for our draft primer coming up on Wednesday here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.